So not too long ago, Sunderland were languishing in League One, the English third tier. And within a few seasons, they got promoted to the Premier League and then qualified for European football. Well, how did they do it? And did they create a blueprint for other English clubs to follow? And ultimately, what does the future hold for the Black Cats? Welcome to another episode of TAMFC, where we break down football developments holistically to inform the opinions of football fans and ultimately make it easier for viewers to digest. So this story starts back in the 2020-2021 season. Sunderland found themselves marinating in League One, English third tier. Now keep in mind that Sunderland are actually a big English team that used to regularly compete in the Premier League from 2007 until 2017, but then suffered back-to-back relegations in 2018 and 2019 and ended up in League One. However, in February 2021, Swiss 24-year-old, yes, I said 24-year-old, businessman Kyril Louis-Dreyfus, who is also a 5% shareholder in Marseille, bought a majority stake in the club and basically took ownership from previous owner Stuart Donald. And within the next season, they actually got promoted to the Championship, where they found themselves playing for about 3 seasons. They ended up hiring and firing a few managers, one of which was Tony Mowbray. But from 2021, they hired technical director Kristjaan Speakman, who also was able to start improving the recruitment and recruiting better and younger players with better future resale value. Essentially, he ended up restructuring Sunderland's recruitment model and added a more data and analytical approach to player recruitment. Some of the first signings under Kristjaan Speakman was Daniel Bollard from Arsenal, Pierre Nkwa from West Ham, and Jack Clark from Spurs, who they later sold to Ipswich for £20 million. And in the first season back in the Championship, they ended up finishing in 6th place. They ended up getting knocked out in the semi-final versus Luton Town. Unlucky, but also a very impressive season for a team back in the Championship for the first time in a few years. But then, unfortunately, in the 2023-2024 season, they ended up finishing 16th on the log, and they fired fan favourite Tony Mowbray. But on the bright side, the club seemed to be heading in the right trajectory, recruiting players that were pretty impressive for a mid-table Championship club. Some of the signings included Elysia Mayende from Sahwa, Timothy Palembe from PSG, and 17-year-old big fish Joe Bellingham, yes, the brother of Jude Bellingham, from Birmingham City. And honestly, till this day, I still don't know how they managed to pull that off. Anyways, like I said, pretty impressive bunch of signings for a mid-table Championship team. However, in May 2023, minority owner of Sunderland, Uruguayan businessman and politician Juan Sartori increased his ownership stake from 20% to 30%, essentially becoming a co-owner. Now keep in mind that Juan Sartori and Kyril Louis-Dreyfus are very connected in French football. Louis-Dreyfus is the son of former Adidas CEO and Marseille owner Robert Louis-Dreyfus, while Sartori sits on the board of Monaco Football Club, amongst other things. So you may ask, why is this relevant? Let me explain. Well, in 2024, Sunderland appointed Regis Le Bris as the manager of the club. A manager who had done extremely well with small French team Lorient, leading them from League 2 to League 1, and essentially helped the club to finish in 10th place. Very impressive for a club of that stature. So, in the season when Le Bris arrived, which was the 2024-25 season, some of their standout signings included Wilson Isidio from Zenit St. Petersburg, a loan move made permanent, Chris Mempham from Bournemouth on loan, and then French under-21 star Enzo Lefebvre from AS Roma on loan with an option to buy, a former player of Le Bris at Lorient. And then with a squad made up of relatively modest players like youngster Chris Rigg, Romain Mundle, Trey Hume, Daniel Bollard, and Anthony Patterson and Patrick Robert. They exceeded all expectations, finishing 4th and then beating Coventry 3-2 on aggregate in the playoff semi-finals. And then finally beating Sheffield United 2-1 in the Championship playoff finals, with a last-minute winner from Academy graduate Tommy Watson to book themselves a spot in the 2025-26 English Premier League. Now, this is where things start to get interesting, so listen up. Now, in case you think this is one of those stories where a modest football club integrates a super advanced analytical and data system to improve a bunch of average footballers' performances, well, I guess you're wrong. It's really not. Let me explain. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that Sunderland don't use data and analytics to their advantage. All major sports and even football teams literally have whole departments dedicated to analytical and data analysis, where they measure a player's performance, fatigue, sleep, and even nowadays quality and volume of pee. Like, I'm not even joking. Arsenal and Man City have literally installed smart high-tech urinals to measure the player's quality and volume of pee. Sorry, I digress. Anyways, back to my point. Now, in 2025, Sunderland hired Florent Ghisolfi to be the director of football, and they signed him from AS Roma, where he had done pretty well. And as a director of football, he was going to work alongside Kristjaan Speakman, who was the technical director. And a bit of a background on Ghisolfi: he is the former sporting director of Lens, Nice, and AS Roma, where he did pretty well and also gained an important and impressive reputation and network. And one of the first things he did when he arrived at Sunderland was to sell youngster Tommy Watson to Brighton Hove Albion for £11 million. And then, most peculiar of all, he sold key player Joe Bellingham to Borussia Dortmund for £30 million, which actually shocked most of their fans, because why would you sell your best player the moment you get promoted to the Premier League? I mean, they literally just received a £220 million payout for winning the Championship playoffs and getting promoted to the Premier League. So why would they sell their best player? Because on top of that, they already sold a few fringe players. So surely the club didn't need to sell any more players, let alone their best player. But okay, let me try to explain this. With the payout of 220 million and the incoming transfers totaling to about 50 million pounds, Sunderland then went absolutely crazy in the transfer market, by firstly signing Enzo Lefi permanently from Roma for £20 million, then signing Habib Diarra from Strasbourg for £30 million, Noah Sadiki from USG for £17 million, Reinaldo Mandaba from Atletico Madrid for a free, Kemsdien Tailbi from Club Brugge for £20 million, Simon Adriga £21 million from Brighton, Robin Roofs £11 million from NEC, Omar Alderete for £10.5 million from Getafe, Nordi Mukiele for £12 million from PSG, Brian Brobbey £21 million from Ajax Amsterdam, Getreude on loan from Red Bull Leipzig, and then star player Granit Xhaka for £17 million from Bayer Leverkusen. Plus some other signings like Nelson Angulo and Bertrand Traore, but we couldn't mention all of them. So basically, it was a massive window for Sunderland Football Club. But obviously, with so much players coming in, lots of other players had to be sold and loaned out. In total, they sold about 12 players and loaned out 9 more, including Simon Adriga in January to Monaco, who they literally signed in July. Anyways, sorry, I digress. Basically, under the guidance of Florent Ghisolfi, Sunderland conducted a massive squad overhaul and spent a total of 155 million in the 2025-26 transfer window. A brilliant transfer window, one might think, but behind the scenes, a lot of disagreements over transfers and recruitment policies were taking place between technical director Kristjaan Speakman and director of football Florent Ghisolfi, which actually led to technical director Kristjaan Speakman resigning in February 2026. However, pundits pointed out that a power struggle between Speakman and Ghisolfi was bound to happen, so the resignation didn't really come as a surprise. A lot of fans wondered, how was Sunderland able to attract so many good players for a team that was newly promoted and had finished 4th in the Championship the season prior? And secondly, a lot of football fans and pundits wondered, how was Regis Le Bris going to integrate 14 players into his squad during one season? Well, to answer the question regarding transfers and recruitment, Noah Sadiki and Habib Diarra had actually been already identified months before by Kristjaan Speakman. Essentially, they were going to be signed before Ghisolfi arrived. And according to Sky Sports, on the other hand, Ghisolfi's pool and network was able to land Sunderland players such as Alderete, Mukiele, Reinaldo and Brian Brobbey. Most impressively was the signing of Granit Xhaka, who took a lot of convincing and help from the co-owner and compatriot Louis-Dreyfus and help of Ghisolfi himself to lure Xhaka to Sunderland. Essentially, they pitched him an offer that was too good to refuse, to the point that he even turned down massive offers from Saudi Arabia. And essentially this pitch was that he was going to lead a fairly young team on his return to the Premier League and a club that had massive ambitions. And he was going to be their star player and talisman. On the other hand, how did Sunderland do so well during the 2025-26 season? Well, manager Regis Le Bris set the tone early by stating that the club's goal is just to achieve 40 points throughout the season, which means that their target was just to avoid relegation, which obviously alleviated a lot of pressure and expectation from the go. Secondly, Le Bris deployed a simple yet effective system, pragmatic but not overly complicated. He either deployed a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 and sometimes on the odd occasion a back three. And the tactical setup was pretty flexible, more or less switching up defensive or attacking approaches depending on the opponent. This included positional play, overloading sections of the midfield to form triangles, fill in half spaces to assist overlapping fullbacks, playing into space out wide, but most importantly, playing with a compact low block with an aggressive press that resulted in direct counter-attacks. Often they played a 4-4-2 on defense, which shored up the team's defensive output, and they became the third best defensive team in the English Premier League by keeping 11 clean sheets, only conceding 46 goals, with goals conceded about 1.3 per match, which would make them the fourth best in the league. Granit Xhaka, Habib Diarra and Noah Sadiki were key to this formation and setup, essentially pulling strings from deep and in and around the midfield, sometimes Xhaka operating as a lone six or in a double pivot. Whilst Enzo Lefebvre, Brian Brobbey and Wilson Idor chipped in with some massive attacking contributions, and players like Roof and Mukiele and Alderete were absolutely vital with their defensive contributions. Eventually, Sunderland ended up finishing 7th and qualified for the Europa League, which exceeded even their own wildest expectations. A job well done for a newly promoted English Premier League team. So, with regards to how Sunderland managed to pull off such a massive transfer window and play so well during the season, well, in conclusion, data and analytics is extremely important to all top-flight football teams. And Sunderland is no different. As we previously mentioned, Kristjaan Speakman came to the club in 2021 and improved the club's recruitment pretty well. And he obviously did this by integrating a more data-based approach to recruitment. But as important as data is to modern day football, you need to understand at the end of the day that football is a business. And in a business, at the end of the day, networking and connections are vital. Trust me, I'm an expert at this. I've read Diary of a CEO. But okay, all jokes aside, Florent Ghisolfi used his incredible network and eye for talent to recruit players that fitted into Kristjaan Speakman's analytical requirements. And at the same time, he recruited players that would fit into Regis Le Bris' style of play. And we all know that in football, the relationship between the director of football and the manager is extremely important, and Sunderland are a great example of this. Essentially, the manager and the director of football worked in unison to create an absolutely superb team. Now, if you're wondering what Sunderland's blueprint for success, well, in a nutshell, get a young billionaire with generational wealth to buy your club. Hire the right people to modernize recruitment, and then get in a young coach with a very pragmatic style of play, and hire a very connected French football director. In a nutshell, of course. Well, as for the future of Sunderland, this upcoming season will be a lot different than the previous season. Because firstly, players' workload is about to increase tremendously because of the Europa League and if the team does well in some of the cup competitions. And secondly, I'm sure fans would like to see progression from the club, but then again, I'm sure they'd be happy if the club can make a deep run in the Europa League or a cup competition and maintain their Premier League status and position. As for the management and recruitment at the club, Ghisolfi came out and said that due to the club spending 155 million in the last season's transfer windows, you shouldn't expect them to spend as much or anywhere close to that amount in the current transfer window. And I quote in saying that this season's recruitment is focused on low volume but more precision. And essentially, the most important thing for the squad will be to keep its foundation. So as far as squad compilation goes, Sunderland have already chased away attempts from Chelsea to try and sign Granit Xhaka so he could reunite with his previous manager, Xabi Alonso. And the reasons they gave for rejecting all offers from Chelsea is because they believe Xhaka to be indispensable. Quite a statement from the club, if you think about it. Secondly, they sold Mayende to Club Ron for 20 million due to the player wanting more regular game time, and this would also help improve Sunderland's squad cost ratio. Thirdly, they signed experienced fullback from Lille on a free, Thomas Manure, who had a pretty good previous season, and he played well during the 2026 World Cup. And he may be 34, but personally I don't think he's too old, but maybe that's because he's the same age as me. But look, in conclusion, Sunderland have very ambitious owners and management. And I'm sure sooner or later they would want to take the club to the next level. And it's interesting to see if they can maybe do that this season by trying to aim for maybe a top 6 or even top 5 finish. And maybe even try and win a trophy along the way. To hear from you guys, please let us know in the comment section. Do you think Sunderland's road to success is a blueprint for other English clubs? And how far and how well do you think the Black Cats will do in Europa League and the Premier League this season? Please feel free to like and subscribe, and make sure to check out some of our other content and videos. Thank you for watching another episode of TAMFC, where we break down football developments holistically to inform the opinions of football fans and ultimately make it easier for viewers to digest.